And we are live. So, welcome to episode 264 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we have not Dr. Gozo.
Nice I missed the name.
Doctor.
I'm also not a good typist tonight.
Yes, not a good typist.
God damn it.
And we've got John K. Alvarez. Thank you for joining us there, gentlemen. I appreciate your time as always. And as soon as I said that, Dr. Gozo has left.
Dr. Gozo has gonzo.
Yeah, Dr. Gozo has left the building. So, last week we were there and talking about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and I thought, why not just follow up with the other movie that I enjoy very much, talking about Bruce Robinson's The Rum Diary. So if you're ready to go, shall we get it started?
Let me in.
Let's go, go, go.
All right, you happy now?
Will you wait? So here we are with week 2 of The Good Doctor. A small anecdote before we start, though. Last week in the conversation, we had talked about, I guess, the hippie culture and how I guess the people who had perhaps originally began the movement or were there from the ground up had kind of moved away by the time that it mainstreamed. And a lot of them moved, as someone had said, I can't remember if it was Bill or John, up in Northern California. And that was a place that my favorite author actually had moved, and that was Henry Miller. And Henry Miller, after he had returned from Europe, Miller lived in Paris during the Great Depression as a bum, sleeping on park benches and, just doing all this sort of hardship living. And yet having a fantastic time. And then, of course, the war just made it impossible for him to stay there. He comes back to America and has a very difficult time adjusting to America after a very long time abroad in Europe and then in Greece. And then it just became untenable anywhere in Europe. And he actually wrote a book about it called The Air-Conditioned Nightmare. It was about, coming back to the States after all those years. And he ended up moving to the very remote Big Sur, California, where he wrote like Big Sur and the Oranges of Hieronymus Bosch and all those different things. And someone who was influenced by that was Thompson, who had actually gone up into Northern California into Big Sur. It's unclear whether they had formed any kind of friendship, but I think they did have a bit of an acquaintanceship And he actually did a little writing about Miller because, of course, once everything went mainstream in California, Miller's books, I'd say this real quick, were banned in all English-speaking countries for 27 years because they were deemed pornographic. So, of course, all the fucking hippies somehow found him up there. They're like, where all these drugged-out kids started showing up at his house saying, where are the orgies? And by then, Miller was like in his 60s, and eventually he had to say, get the hell out of here, you goddamn kids. But Thompson was not those people, and actually was sort of very observant of Miller, and said that if anything, he documented that the people were showing up there, but that actually Miller was very fastidious and what he considered to be a very moral man. So just a small anecdote there. My favorite author was up there trying to get away from it all, but the damn hippies kept following up there.
Same thing happened with Jack Kerouac. When after he did the On the Road and had his time in San Francisco, he moved back to Massachusetts and actually settled down, took care of his mother, was a devout Catholic, and people would still, roused him about, doing drugs and driving across the country. And he's like, that's not what I do now.
Right.
Yeah.
We visited his grave, and it's actually it's got a huge Catholic symbol on it, and people are still leaving copies of On the Road and bottle caps and bottles of booze there. And I'm like, you don't get it was a picture when he was a young man, and he moved on.
Yeah.
Hunter Thompson didn't move on, though. That's the thing.
This is kind of an origin story and sort of differs from Fear and Loathing, where maybe, at that time he was at Fear in 1970s, he was in his prime, so to speak, Hell's Angels, Fear and Loathing in Vegas, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail. The Rum Diary is based on a book by the same name that was published by him posthumously after he had passed away. I want to say before we get started that this is available. Bill discovered this. It is available for free right now on YouTube. So it's not a movie that typically streams, but there are free copies available to watch on YouTube. So I think everybody should check this. Let's start out with John. What did you think of The Rum Diary?
I enjoyed it. Was it one of my favorite films? No, but it was a lot better than, again, like I was expecting to see. I had no idea what it was when I first went into it. I remember seeing it years ago, and when I saw it again yesterday and today to gear up for this, I'm going, this was a very good movie. But I kept on saying it was Hunter S. Thompson light when I was watching it, even with Johnny Depp's performance. But it was an outstanding movie and a wonderful introduction to that style of journalism writing and that type of story at the time, which was the late 50s, 1960s. I mean, they showed the debate with Nixon and Kennedy. You didn't see the image of Kennedy of it, but there's a lot of stories that were written about and movies that were done about that era. And to me, this is one of the top quality ones. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay. Not Dr. Gonzo. He has changed his name, gone down to the city hall and filled out the requisite paperwork. And not Raoul Duke either. What did you think of The Rum Diary?
I first saw this when it came out in the theaters. I was am still a huge Hunter Thompson fan, so I was quick to get on it. I was in the middle of this book, Proud Highway, which is collected letters. And a lot of that, good section of that, comes from when he was living in Puerto Rico and working at a newspaper. So that's sort of like the semi-autobiographical version of Hunter Thompson's early life. So I was really excited to see it. I remember seeing it and being not so excited about it because it wasn't Fear and Loathing. But I had read the book, so I knew the story. But rewatching it, I have a better appreciation for it now than I did whatever it was 11, 12 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, it's beautifully shot. The opening scene is great with the plane. I loved it. Great soundtrack. Really good, solid performances from a bunch of
Mhm.
really high quality actors. And
Mhm.
I think the book goes from, it's a lot like Hunter Thompson's writing. It goes from very solemn, really important, really important. He's saying something, and then it switches to some ridiculous bit of slapstick, and it bounces back and forth between the two.
Mhm.
So there's a lot going for it. I thought the only problem I had with the movie is that it's hard to translate Thompson's writing into a film, because the power of Thompson's writing is the beauty of his prose, and that didn't necessarily carry over into the film. So I thought it was a little bit paced a little bit poorly, even with all the things that was going for it. It was a really enjoyable watch.
Mhm.
Could have been edited or paced a little bit differently, but other than that, I enjoyed watching it. I'm glad we had this excuse for me to dig it out and watch it again.
Yeah, this movie is from 2011, so we're talking 14 years ago.
Mhm.
It has a term that, and because it's based in something that happened almost 65 years ago or more. I thought of a
Mhm.
term that I haven't heard in a very long time, but I encountered it. I probably haven't heard it in 20 plus years, but I encountered some of it. Am I lagging?
Yes.
Am I lagging still? Shit.
I blame the not
How about now?
doctor.
Still?
You're
That's
good.
my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it has a lot of ugly Americanism.
Mhm.
That sort of horrific behavior that you see from Westerners when they go to poor places, and just abuse the shit out of people, and flash their money around, and just generally give Americans a bad name.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was very prevalent in the 20th century after World War II,
Sure.
when America became sort of the leading superpower in the world, and you don't see it so much anymore, but it was prevalent at that time, and this movie is full of it.
Mhm.
It's a lot more grounded than Vegas, than Fear and Loathing, and it's
Mhm.
more alcohol fueled.
Yeah.
We really don't start to get into heavy narcotics, although there's a scene. By the time we get into drugs in this movie, there's only about 20 minutes left in the film.
Truth.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just constant, alcohol, excess and rum and beer and,
Mhm.
hangovers and things like that.
Mhm.
So it probably would be a little more relatable to the casual viewer, who may not necessarily be, familiar with Thompson's work, where we said, if you watched Vegas without reading the book, you wouldn't kind of understand it. This would probably be a lot more relatable.
Yeah.
Fantastic
Mhm.
cast, like Dr. Gonzo or not Dr. Gonzo was saying. You've got Depp, you've got Aaron Eckhart,
Yeah.
you've got
Mhm.
Richard Jenkins.
Wow.
Richard Jenkins is just one of the great character actors. I love
Yep.
him in just everything that he does. And even
Yep.
here, he steals like every scene. And that's hard to do because the person who actually, when you
Mhm.
see him going at it with Giovanni Ribisi,
Yeah.
who plays Moberg, Giovanni Ribisi steals every scene from Richard Jenkins. So it's like
Yeah.
this constant competition, of who's better in these small little vignette scenes. It's just, I think it's a very
Mhm.
good movie. It's just on the cusp of being great. And like I was
Right.
telling not Dr. Gonzo, it's a very smart movie.
Yeah.
It's a wonderfully character driven movie.
Hmm.
All
Yes.
the characters that are in this, even like minor ones. Not to jump too ahead or out of order, but when the night after drinking, they go to have something to eat. The characters that are in that bar type deal, they just stood out. They popped out. I've met several of these type of characters type deal. Maybe with a different accent, maybe with a different, background, but that like, what are you doing here? Attitude. And that really helped add so much color and depth to the movie.
Yes.
That when you're hearing Johnny Depp's narration after seeing these scenes, you're getting it. It's not like he's preaching to you. He's doing exactly what he was told to do, be a narrator, type deal. And it's amazing that this movie came out in 2011 and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas it came out in 1998.
Yes.
And Depp looks younger in 2011 than he did in 1998.
Yeah, of course.
I swear to God, there's a portrait of him in his attic that's aging. He's just staying the same, man.
Yeah, pretty much. I gotta say, man, talking about the cast, Amber Heard in this movie, is it like one of her first films? She just is.
Yeah.
I can see why Johnny Depp let her shit in his bed, because wow.
Yeah.
That's like seeing a fresh I don't know, seeing a fresh 7 of 9 on Star Trek. It's just wow.
Exactly.
Breathtaking.
She really is. She really is a
wasn't
mermaid.
her first film, right?
I think maybe.
Only because
guys, I'll be right back. I got to deal with this lag.
All right. Yeah,
All
she looks like she's 17 on this thing.
Right. And there's so much, I don't want to say youthful energy because that's such a cop out.
Yeah.
But it's when he turns around and says, I think I fell in love with somebody, when the character says that, you could believe it.
Well, you can. That's
there
where
was something about her.
Where he got hooked.
I mean, when his character turned around and said, I thought you were a mermaid.
Mm-hmm. Good line.
And it's a great line too. I thought you were a mermaid. I'm from Connecticut. I actually laughed out loud at that too. Because I'm like, oh yeah, because all the good mermaids are from Connecticut. It's where they show up. There was a wonderful, sweetly cynical, not nasty cynical humor in this whole movie type deal.
Yeah.
It wasn't constant. It wasn't dripping, but man, when it came out, it was at perfect timing.
Yes. That's that humor in this movie was really well timed and well earned. It wasn't like stuck in there just for the hell of it.
Right. They didn't throw it for a cheap laugh.
The whole thing with the car when the thieves take the front seat out and he's riding down the streets in his lap. Hilarious. I was laughing the whole time.
Yeah, but it was just the right amount. It was just right there. It wasn't like, hey, we should throw a funny part in. It came organically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically the story of this guy who's bullshitted his way onto a job as a reporter, having no experience. And he's just at this
great CV. It's all bullshit. He throws it away. Great.
Because it's a dead end newspaper for like reporters who are like on their last leg. And it's funny because Richard Jenkins characterizes it perfectly by saying this is not the last chance saloon, which is basically what it is. That's exactly what it is. Am I still lagging?
Yep.
Off and on, yeah. There's sometimes you're
lagging.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't. I'll be back. You guys carry on. I'll be back.
You know what it is? It's the last day of winter, and it's just like a dragging along, man. It's exactly what it is. There's so much of this town, and it's weird when in this movie, even though it was based in Puerto Rico, I live, for anybody who doesn't know, I live in a very small town at the very end of New Jersey. It's an island. For years, I wrote on 2 different newspapers, type deal. And to hear some of this conversation, especially about what sells the paper, I'm like, this is just way too true. I've had these moments. I remember writing the first time I wrote for one paper twice. I wrote for a couple of years, was let go. And then when a new editor came in, he reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to write again? And I'm like, sure, why not? But we used to have these discussions all the time. I remember writing a story about the homeless people, or houseless now,
Oh,
in South Jersey, and the publishers who are in another city turned around and went, "Oh yeah, it's fantastic, but we can't have a lot of this in there
right.
because of being in South Jersey and being a shore town and being, with tourists." They didn't want to hear it. I mean, people were, and it was funny because I found myself fighting for it. And I was
I
actually,
worked for a paper in Brigantine. Same deal, same size,
Yep.
same politics, same island.
and it was funny because the one guy, the one editor, who was very funny. He just retired. Was a really old fashioned editor,
Okay.
big bushy mustache, always on the phone, type deal. We're trying to get the story, but he turned around and goes, there's people calling you up saying they're doing a thing like raising the money for like this shelter, and I go, and they said, keep sending us that reporter, and I'm like, I'm not a reporter, and he goes, you are now.
Yeah.
He goes, they keep referring you to the homeless reporter,
Mm.
because I was the only one that was writing about it at the time.
Right.
I'm like, all right, if that's what you want to call me, I'll be more than happy to put that mantle on. But but the whole politics about it, and selling a property and saying we can come to the whole, when they do the whole deal in the movie, you turn around and say, you want to raise it sales tax 5%, so you say 10%, and people get mad and they scream, oh, we'll drop it down. I've seen this happen,
Sure.
So even though it was in a different area, in a different locale with different cultures, the more things change, the more they say the same. They were willing to go with that route, which back in 2011 was kind of daring. Because it was during the Obama era, the hope and change situation, and they were willing to put it up and did it unabashedly. And I'm like, damn. And it wasn't like they beat you over the head with it. They just laid it out.
Yeah.
Which was a very nice underscoring in this movie. Also gave a great idea to Aaron Eckhart, who played the most believable villain I've seen in a long time. Or I shouldn't even say villain, I should say the antagonist.
He doesn't become a villain until the very end. The whole time he's being charming, like most businessmen will be.
Yeah.
The one time when he flashes that evil is when he yells at the guys in the jungle looking at his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take a shotgun to you the next time.
Yeah, and great scene when they turn around and are trying to get something to eat, and these guys are staring at him. Like, don't look.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. Don't look. Don't hit. And of course, they were in the very drunken stupor,
Mm-hmm.
which was when you noticed that. Ah, shit. You get in the car, I'll push. I think I want that on a T-shirt.
Yeah, that was a fantastic scene. But of course, when he goes full villain at the end, when he starts taking everything away from him and going after him about the girl and leaving him on the dock, is all the mask falls off, which is constant theme in Hunter Thompson's work throughout the years, where he will get right into the face of that mask, knowing that the corruption behind it, and make it fall apart in some way.
And it's always told in a believable way. In other movies or other style of writings, when the villain, or like in this case, the antagonist, takes off the mask and shows their true face,
right?
A lot of the times it's over the top.
Yep.
There wasn't that big of a difference between his charming side and his fine, I'm taking all your toys away.
Right. It's just
side.
That menace comes out.
Yeah.
This movie, when I watched it again, it reminded me that I've seen this movie 1,000 times. However, it seemed like, because the book was from 1959, this story was being told by Thompson before it became an institutional, cliche. And he told it again, and he told it better than most of the carbon copies that are out there.
He wrote a fictional story from the point of view of a reporter.
What are you guys talking about?
The over thing of the story, like I was mentioning, that even though it was in Puerto Rico and some of the situations and the characters were different, living in Cape May and writing for a newspaper, I experienced some of the same things of going through it. Like I mentioned, I had written a couple of stories about the people who were homeless in the South Jersey area. Quite accidental. A guy asked me to come in and introduce me to a guy and said, "Do you think you can make this into a story?" And I said, the publishers loved it. Turned around and said it was fantastic, but we can't have all this, because there's no homeless people in South Jersey, because of the tourists and everything else and scaring them off. And the land in southern New Jersey that's being bought out and turned into, like, there's certain areas now in South Jersey, they've raised the prices so much and the locals can't live there anymore.
Yep.
But they want them to come in and work. And I was pointing out the fact that there's a similar line between both of these type stories, that even though, everything, the more things change, the more they say the same type deal.
Well, it's also an interesting indictment of journalism. And that, it's so fucking risk averse. You don't want to. Am I lagging again?
Yes, sir. But you look good this time, man. It's a very stoic face.
That's not helpful.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we can't have people knowing that there's low internet in South Jersey. The tourists.
Yeah, I don't know. I unplugged the modem and started it over again. I restarted my computer a couple.
Wait,
times.
what episode is this, Michael?
264.
It's 264. I tell you, man, the powers that be are just trying to stop your message. This is what they're doing. They're trying to stop you and Dr. not Dr. Gonzo.
Yeah.
But I mean,
always after me.
It's funny because, they bring him in to do this job, and the job is like doing horoscopes, or like talking about bowling. And, he goes to interview those families, and they're just like, like they come to Puerto Rico, but they never leave the hotel. And if you know people that, go on these like 2-week cruises, you never leave the ship. You go to these resorts, you never leave the resort. People still do this to this day. I have good friends, they go down to Mexico. They never leave the resort.
Yeah. Why go?
Yeah.
You might as well stay at home.
Right.
You're getting the same experience.
Yeah, I talked to a buddy of mine, and he's like, I could just rent a boat and we can take down the Mullica River, save a shit ton of money for a week, but the wife wants to go here and go there. But then when they go there, they never leave. So I mean, it's an interesting, and you can see where he was already getting the cynicism from.
Right.
And that, these are the great whites, asses that wouldn't feel an arrow, these are the people that, have come out of World War II, and, the American dream really isn't, it's not romantic. It's just, okay, we're here, we won, and, don't dig for anything else, that kind of thing.
There's always a worm inside the apple. The apple might be sound, but you're always going to find that worm somewhere.
Well, that's the interesting thing, is that, you find out you have to pay to get to be part of the dream.
Yeah.
Because it's a land grab. I mean, like I'm sure you guys were talking about, they're land grabbing Puerto Rico.
Right.
All these different islands. And, I think, his eyes are sort of awakened to that. And then when he, the journalistic side of him sort of comes to life, nobody wants to fucking hear it.
Right.
It's
I don't know. It reminds me of an old joke that or not an old joke. When I was teaching college, and especially theater history, I was pointing out a section of it right after World War II into the early 60s about the quote unquote American dream when it came to playwriting. This story would fit into that sort of thing, because I was also using Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, or Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire, where you're seeing these people fighting for the same type of situation of fighting for the American dream and having their eyes open to it, so to
Right.
speak. It's like the old joke that George Carlin once said, of course it's the American dream, you got to be asleep to believe it, type deal. And I hate to sound that cynical, but I think that's what Johnny Depp started realizing when he started sobering up, or his character, so to speak, when he was looking at it with clearer eyes,
Right.
type deal. Not just that Amber Heard frolicking in the pool.
Well, there was nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. Absolutely.
I mean,
Puerto Rico stole America, so God bless America. There we go.
yeah, that was in
They made
that
a
was
comment in that movie that they're not quite Americans. You know?
Oh yeah.
They had that second class citizen
Oh, yeah.
situation, and that lasted all the way up to now.
When we were quickly talking about the scene at the bar when they were driving away, or Johnny Depp was pushing the car so they could drive away, the guy was yelling at him, calling them Yanks.
Yep.
Type deal. I mean, it was, the villains were good representations of a villain
Yeah.
in this. They weren't comical, they weren't over the top, or they weren't exaggerated or weighed down with somebody's opinion. I mean, Mike, when you were gone, fixing the computer, we were talking about Aaron Eckhart as the villain,
Yeah.
or as the
Yeah.
antagonist, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the way he played it and everything else, when he showed his truer side, it wasn't much different than his charming side.
No.
It was just who he was. And
Yeah.
it was a realistic version of it. Aaron Eckhart, I think, is one of the more underrated American actors out there. Whenever he
It's
gets
really-
a role, he does a good job.
It's really weird what happened to him. Like, he did The Dark Knight, and then we just never seem to have seen him again.
Mm-hmm. He did
Like,
a
he was
really good
great.
movie. Thank You for Smoking.
Yeah, that was a good.
Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah.
That was
No.
before this movie. He did a really good one. I honestly felt that if they had the technology in the early 2000s, late 1990s to start the Marvel movies run, he would have made a great Captain America. You
Oh.
know,
Yeah.
he's got that chiseled jaw, and everything on it, has that look type deal. But
I
he's
think-
he's also really good. You give him the part, villain or hero, and he plays it.
Mhm.
And he plays it really well.
I think one of the ugliest scenes in the film is when he runs those guys off the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were talking about that, but I mean, like the
We
guys
started
are
to a
just,
little, yeah.
the guys are just hanging like right on the fringe of the beach,
Mhm.
and you could think from their perspective that they're like what the, because that's not like maybe that's exclusively American, that whole privacy kind of thing, like this is the line here and you stay kind of away from it. In other places it's not really the case. It's
Nah,
more community.
That goes all the way back, Rich. People are always doing that. We have that big battle right now about the beaches. It's the same thing where beaches are available to all people, but only up to the water line. So you got rich people coming down from their mansions and laying out these barriers so you can't be on the beach. And as the water recedes, they're still blocking off the area. That shit is constant.
I just read in the paper about 4 days ago, there is a section of beach by the Delaware Bay in North Cape May where a lot of people go instead of into Cape May or in the Wildwood area. That's for sale. That the owner of the property actually bought the beach when he bought the house years ago. And it's like, I forget how much of a section it is, but it basically takes his property line and extends it to the ocean. And they're telling people they can buy it now. You can buy a section of the beach and say it's yours. And the first thing I thought is, what are you going to do? Put up a fence? How are you going to keep them? How are you going to keep them away? Type deal. Being a transfer coming from Philadelphia into Cape May. I remember the first 5 years. I mean, Christ, the first 2 weeks I was in high school, I got the shit kicked out of me because I was politely told, "You're not from here," by several people. And they looked at me as an imposer, and I'm like, I'm 18 years old and I'm poor. How am I imposing? But the more and more I stayed down here, I could see that. Like in the Jersey Shore area, I was told by people, we don't call it the shore, we call it the beach. You know,
True.
it's the people in Philly or the people that are outside that call it the Jersey Shore.
Well, we do have that tribalism all the way up and down the coast, man.
Oh yeah,
We have Staten Island has invaded and taken over everything between, you know, Asbury Park and Tom's River, and it's
Right.
a battle. It's a battle because there's people who come into the area, they overload the resources, and then they start making the area like the thing that they left. You know?
Yeah.
Here's
It
a
was- it's
question.
funny.
Is-
Go ahead, Mike. I'm
Here's
sorry.
a question. Is what Aaron Eckhart and his crowd, what they're doing, is that progress?
It
Progress
was
for who?
considered that at the time. I
Is
think.
it is developing that, you know, developing those islands and building resorts and, you know, putting hotels, even though it has a very rude face, is that
Mhm.
progress? I mean, in the hands of locals, it's left, and probably largely left undeveloped or, you know, untouched and, you know, as
Mhm.
is, and people just go about their day-to-day life. Is it better to build those things, or, you know, do you just leave it as it is?
Well, that was dealt with, I thought, really well in the movie The Descendants with George Clooney, and that discussion they have throughout the movie about this huge tract of land,
Mhm.
original beachfront property that wasn't developed, and what were they going to do about it? What were they going to do with it?
Mhm.
So yeah.
I never saw that movie.
Oh, okay. It's the same. It's the same argument in this one. You know, what are you going to do with it? Are the locals going to benefit, or is this all going to be just, you know, cordoned off beach that only white people can go to? That kind of.
Mhm. Or only the wealthy can go to. I mean, I don't want to make it sound that way, but that with the Aaron Eckhart confronting the locals were saying, "We're stopping here. We're just looking at the beach," and he was still, you know, he was still trying to stop them from that.
Truthfully, they were probably looking at Amber Heard.
Well,
you know,
that's true.
sunbathing out there.
And that's what Aaron Eckhart said. You're staring at my wife.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you know, they're hanging like on the fringe in the woods, so you know it is a little sketchy looking. It's not like they're walking on the beach or sitting on the beach drinking some beers. They're like hanging in that little wooded area. You're like, what the fuck are you doing in the woods? You know, that is it is a little weird. So yeah, that's probably what they were doing.
Well, the whole thing with the Amber Heard is that, you know, he doesn't own her. He's acting like he does, so it's illusory. It's very symbolic for owning land, owning this property, having this development. It's the same thing where he's very defensive of this thing that he doesn't actually own and has no right to claim, which is him acting like he owns this girl.
And they have the type of argument even down here in southern New Jersey. There's an area that I just heard discussion about between Cape May and Cape May Point, which technically Cape May Island is less than 2 miles long, but it's broken up into 3 sections. And there's a section called West Cape May that I used to call, you know, Cape May and Cape May Point's, you know, redheaded stepchild, because nobody really used to hang out there. And it's becoming now like a little artist community. Artists meaning coffee shops are popping up there, organic foods are popping up there, vegans. And all of a sudden there's a lot of people now walking around saying, boy, this would be great for a McMansion. And you're seeing it, and you're seeing that type. And the thing is, as somebody was arguing about it, is it wrong or is it just progress? Like you were asking, Michael, that seems to be the question in this movie. Even though they were considered the antagonist, that was done at the time in 1958, 59, 60. You know, that's how it was. You know, you went in there, you bought it, type deal. And
well, it's the same as going to any of these islands. You know, whether you're in the Caribbean or, you know, like where I was over in Indonesia. You know, you go over to like Bali and Sumatra, and you know, like all these places are driven by like tourist economies. You know, they're you know, because on their own they wouldn't have any economies. It'd just be people living there, and you know, I don't know how it would function. But I mean, those sorts of beautiful islands, you know, function off people from, you know, America or Europe or Australia, closer, a little closer to, where they are in South Asia, coming there year round, bringing in, bringing in money.
Yeah.
Now Aaron Eckhart is clearly a jerk. And most of those characters that were, part of his little cohort are clearly unlikable. And I'm not saying that, there's some, hidden truth there. I'm just, I was just posing the question about progress. But those are the things that bring dollars into those parts of the world.
Well, we just lived through that, living outside of Asbury Park, as I do. When I moved up here, the place was a shithole. It was a out and out ghetto. It was a failing city. And I watched it grow into an artist community. I watched it grow into a very hip place. And now we're at the point where it's wealthy people in $3 million condos, and all the cool things that made people want to go to that town are being driven out because they can't afford it. So now it's just $1 million condos and overpriced restaurants, and we're betting on, will it fail again and go back to being a shithole and go through that whole phase again? Yeah, I think progress is inevitable, and the saying still holds. May your hobby, if you want to curse someone, say may your hobby fall on mainstream audiences, because it's gonna get ruined. It seems like an inevitability.
In the 90s, in my own experience, I was with a guy who actually went to Stockton. His name was Michael Laird. He started Cape May Stage down here, and we were at the time approaching and continually renting a city building. But the first time he was down there were so many people that were against him and pushed him back because they kept on saying they were bringing the wrong element in. And he turned around and said, and what element is that? People with dollars? He said, because he turned around and said he rode into Cape May. He was never here. He was on a bike race to raise money for cancer type deal from Atlantic City. He was a dealer in Atlantic City. He said he rode into Cape May on a bike, and he goes, and I never really left. That's when he said, you know what this place needs is a theater. He pushed it and turned around and said, you could make this like a South Jersey New Hope, where artists don't come here on purpose. They come here accidentally the first time. They return the second time on purpose. You go, and it did. It brought attention to the area. But the same thing happened. People came in and then turned around and said, oh, you know what will be better? Me, not you.
Yeah.
In some cases. And they pushed them out in that way.
Yes.
And again, but is that progress? I have nothing against the theater that's done down here now, but I noticed they're doing some of the shows they did over the past 10 years, 12 years. This is like the fourth time they're doing it. And they're going, well, it makes money. I'm like, yeah, but are you bringing in new things like it used to be? It does. It depends. This is the argument you can have. I'm sorry, Michael.
I don't think there's ever. I think the way that it's done in this movie is probably the way that it'll always be done. Someone rich will take the land and see that it's undeveloped, and they'll bring, these sorts of resorts and hotels. And if they're surfing, then they'll bring surfing in, and it'll bring dollars in the community. But it's never going to be, like some sort of even like flatland utopia where like everybody can participate. It probably, that's not the way the system works.
And it's no longer an undeveloped, beautiful piece of land either.
Yeah, that's the trade-off. That's the trade-off.
There was
it becomes crowded, and you can't move, and that sort of thing. But there's no, it seems like there's either it becomes a remote thing, like a shore town in the wintertime, or more remote than that, or it becomes, the opposite end, which is, what we have everywhere you go where these.
Even in New York City. I mean, the play and the musical Rent was about that. When they were pointing about the area and Alphabet City, where it was all the artists and the bohemians and blah, 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 blah. And as somebody said, by the time Rent was done its run, it went from being an artistic statement to a retro play because the area had changed. All of a sudden, there was an M&M store and there was the Walt Disney store. and a lot of it got cleaned out, and they all kept saying it was in the name of progress. And in some cases, yes, I could see that. But how far is too far when it comes to progress?
Well, there's an interesting
examine in this.
It's true. How far do you want it to fall apart too? Because you remember what Alphabet City was like in the 70s and the 80s.
Right. True.
Here's the thing, and I think this is a good place to kind of make the comparison.
Okay.
There's a line in there from Aaron Eckhart when you first meet Aaron Eckhart's character, and he has that conversation with Depp, and they really start talking for a couple of minutes. And Depp goes, "I had no idea this island was so beautiful." And Aaron Eckhart looks at him and he just says the perfect thing. He goes, "Yeah, it's God's idea of money." And and that he's speaking the truth. The truth. That is the value, but that's not necessarily Aaron Eckhart's idea of money. Or maybe it's not humanity's or America's idea of money. But they're the two extremes, and so you could either have this untouched kind of thing, or you can have development with all the good and bad things that come with it.
Right.
Largely,
that leaves you asking the question: what is it that Kemp wants? What is it that Hunter Thompson wants? He knows he wants to stop this corrupt piece of shit from ruining something that's beautiful and pristine, but what does he actually want? Like, what is the desire there?
What I saw was
the movie.
No, it's not really answered in the movie, but there is that small scene where he's having that conversation with Richard Jenkins, and he's saying, this is Puerto Rico, and Richard Jenkins is like, no, this is America. This is not Puerto Rico. He's like, nobody gives a flying fuck about, who's losing. They want to hear about who's winning. That's what the American dream is. And nobody wants to rock the boat, because if they rock the boat, they may not be able to climb on. You got to get on it, and that's your chance. Probably, Thompson's idea, and I'm only hypothesizing here, would be something that probably would, be spread out for everybody. Because the way he was talking about the ship, it's a small line, but he's talking about how that ship went down and spilled like 12 tons of hydrochloric acid in the water, and it wrecked the fishing economy, and just no one gave a fuck. And so kids were living in cars, because they had no food, and that I think that was sort of Thompson's observation, which is you've got this whole other group of people that are starving here. And then you've got, the Aaron Eckharts that are, just pulling lobsters out of the ocean as they go snorkeling, with their super hot 21-year-old girlfriend. He's like, something's fucked up here, God's idea of money, So, that's probably, where Thompson's interests were, or at least, that's what he portrayed in the book.
Right.
That's what he portrayed in the book.
And it probably could have been his, or what he believed at the time when he wrote it too. Being a little younger and not as cynical.
Yeah, the little
or as experienced as he had become.
Yeah,
he was. I mean, the way he was even writing it, or the way Johnny Depp character, who was loosely based on the author, saying, fighting. I smell ink and I smell blood in the water, and it's ink. If it means I have to stand here and call these people out, that's what I'm going to do. Type deal. To at the very least, make them aware. That they're being watched.
That's an interesting observation, because Thompson was about 22 or 23 when this happened. Thompson was born in 1937, so this took place in 60. So he's somewhere around that 22, 23 years old. Where were we when we were 22 and 23? Do we exactly have the same mindset? I hope not. For all of our sakes. So So
his cynicism,
the lens of idealism.
Yeah, and he was a little cynical when he was watching the debate. When it was Nixon, and he said, he goes, he has the right smile. He's not going to win. They're going to vote for the Irishman. He's probably going to wind up dying.
But they won't let him live.
And I'm going, but that's him being, that's the first sign of his cynicism.
There's there's never been a Hunter Thompson book or a movie without something about Nixon. It's just that was his perennial enemy. That was like the symbol of all things evil for him to rail against forever.
Exactly. But it's the way it was. And again, the evil that, or I don't want to say evil, is because the antagonist in it, as financially narcissistic as they were, just looking at dollar signs, it wasn't uncommon at the time. It just took people. I mean, what did the guy call liberals? A combination of liberals is nothing just with some of the commie leadership and black muscle or something to that effect. And Johnny Depp just looked at him like, "Excuse me," It was where the hell did that come? But that was the guy's, and for some people, that was their mentality. I mean, Christ, I
think he's also making caricatures. He's making caricatures.
Yeah, they're not as pronounced as Fear and Loathing, but there definitely.
Yeah.
Dude, it was 6 years ago this summer. I had a guy that looked at me when he heard my last name and said, "You don't." I'm shocked. You don't look like a border jumper.
What?
It was at a car show that I was covering for the newspaper.
Oh, shit.
And there was this guy going. He looked at me because he was talking about a theater that I worked at, and I said, "Yeah, I worked there for 18 years." And I said, "Oh, we know." And it's the new guy. "Oh, we know." I said, "No, I worked before he got there." And he asked me what was my name, and I turned around and said, "Well, I write under the name Johnny Wawa, but my last name is Alvarez. My name's John Alvarez." And the guy looked at me, and he got a weird look on his face. He goes, "You don't look like a border jumper."
I remember a story your brother told me a long time ago about going for a job interview and being confused. This can't be you, your brother with his blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah, I told the guy when he looked at me, he goes, "Hey, you don't look like a border jumper." I said, "What makes you think I'm Canadian?" And he was like, "Oh, I didn't mean." I said, "You meant every word of it, pal." Who the hell are you kidding?
Just own up to it. I went out to I do wage compliance interviews sometimes for my job, so I have to go out to these construction sites. And for the most part, the guys are like, I'm like, "Do you want to answer some dumb questions for 5 minutes? I got to make sure you're getting paid correctly." And they're like, "Yeah." Every once in a while, you'll run into people who are like, "Nah, I don't want to do it." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a free country, buddy. Don't worry about it."
Right.
But I ran into a group one time, and like the first guy said no, and then they all were like, "Nah," they weren't rude or anything, but like, "Nah, we don't want to do it." So I went back to the office. And I told the office ladies, and this one lady really got a bee up her ass about the whole. She said, "Oh, I can't believe that, that can't, And I'm like, "Just relax, this sort of thing." So I got on the phone with the engineer, the guy who ran the engineering company that was running the project. And the first question out of his mouth was, he goes, "You weren't wearing an ice jacket, were you?" I'm like, "No, man, like I didn't, do anything like that." I could understand it. Like it just rolled right with it. I'm like, if I had done that, I would have understood it, but I didn't even do anything like that. He's like, "All right, I'm just checking." He was making a joke. But
you were wearing an icy Frozen Pop T-shirt, so
yeah,
confusing. So. No, when the person said it to me, a guy that I knew he said, "Dude, the look that hit your face was funnier than hell." You were like, "What the fuck?" Out of all the things I was expecting to get asked that day, that was the last one I would ever expected to hear. But I went, "Oh, okay, here we go." But it's I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, John.
No, I was just rambling. Go ahead.
I think, it's important to recognize, and I think we've covered it pretty well in these two movies the past 2 weeks, that there's more to these stories than just the antics. Thompson was trying to say a lot, and he did say a lot. He wasn't just trying. He did say a lot. And, not only are these movies that should be watched, they're books that should be read. More important than the movies. So if you get a chance, spend $2 on Amazon, buy a used copy of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, buy a used copy of The Rum Diary. And hear what you have to say. like we were saying last week, this guy was a great observer. And it's a very cynical observation that he always produces, but there's a lot of truth there.
Yeah.
Is it the whole truth? No, it's not. Is it honest, though? Yes, it is. From his perspective, it's very honest, and it's worth listening to, and it's worth reading, and you should go check it out. And check out both of these movies if you can. This movie is beautifully shot. It's a beautiful location. You're constantly just, up against beaches or beautiful back roads, with green foliage everywhere. You've got Amber Heard, who's about 23 when she made this movie, who's just smoking hot beyond comprehension. And it's a shame. This last thing, and I guess we'll close it out. Neither of their careers recovered from that divorce. Right. You don't see Johnny Depp anymore. And I think she's retired from acting. I think she went to go live in Spain and she got married. And I think she got remarried and she has a kid now. So she may be done. But neither of them have done anything really since that divorce, which has been, 3 or 4 years now. And it's a shame. I think Depp's
in movie jail, but he will get out eventually.
Well, I think
he's done commercials now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that, but something, he's another one like Hunter. I think he still lives a very hardcore lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I remember when that divorce happened and, his name was cleared, Robert Downey Jr. said he reached out to him to see if, he was interested in, because a lot of that was about living, a very fueled sort of hardcore lifestyle and, personalities clashing because of that.
Make a pint of wine.
Yeah, and so, maybe it was a good time to, clean up your act, but I guess he wasn't interested in that.
He actually went on the road with a band.
Yeah, so that.
Yeah.
I remember when the verdict came down from the divorce, the first shot of him was going into a pub. So I was like, okay, that's where we're at. We're good. Right, everything's back to normal. All right, let's get to the part in the stream where we rate the film. This channel has a rating system that goes from 0 to 5 up by halves. So 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, all the way to 5. So 0, for example, would be I'd rather lick a homeless guy's toe than watch this film again. All the way to 5, which is this is the journey, this is the destination, this is why I watch films in the first place. John K. Alvarez, what would you give Bruce Robinson's The Rum Diary?
I'm giving it a solid 4.
Okay.
I actually was it the end? Was it the journey? No, but it's a nice rest station on the road, so to speak. Beautifully done. Exactly what Dr. Gonzo said about the music. That scene in the blues bar was a phenomenal piece of shooting and music type deal. And any chance you got a light, any chance the images were set up, it was great.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff for some reason just, didn't. I don't know. I think I had a problem with the cockfighting. I don't know why. I'm just not a big fan of it. But I'm giving it a solid 4. I recommend it for anybody that, sit down on a Saturday afternoon or Thursday night and watch the damn thing. It's really good.
Yep.
Okay. Not Dr. Gonzo and not Raul Duke either. What would you give The Rum Diary?
Yeah, I agree with John. It's a solid 4. There's lots of good stuff in this movie. Is it my favorite movie? No. Am I going to be driven to watch it every year like I do with Fear and Loathing? Probably not. But I was very, very happy that I sat down and watched it. And I'll probably read the book again after whatever it's been, like 20 years. It's just it's a solid piece of work. Great performances. If you want to watch a clinic on acting, watch Giovanni Ribisi in this. Watch Aaron Eckhart. Watch all of them. They were fantastic, and you should watch this movie at least once.
All right. I'm going to line up with you guys and give it a very solid 4. A 4.5 would mean you're almost on the verge of cinema, And this movie has moments like that.
Yeah.
It has moments like that. And they're basically the ones with Giovanni Ribisi and Richard Jenkins. But they're fleeting and far between. The rest of it is very good when it's not at that point, but it's not consistently there. And one of my favorite scenes, as a quick descriptor, is at the end when they try to make a last stand and print the paper. And they've taken all the equipment out. And Johnny Depp just has this great line where he says, "You smell that?" He goes, "That's the smell of bastards." And like even Giovanni Ribisi's face is like, like as cynical as Moberg is. He's like, "Holy shit!" And it's just a great scene. So it has a lot of little scenes like that interspersed throughout. But I'm going to give it if I could give it like a 4.4, but it's that's not the way the rating system works. I would say that, but yeah, I'll give it a 4. And I own a copy on DVD, and now I own a copy on Blu-ray, and I own the book. If anybody wants a copy of this DVD, I'd be happy to mail it to them without hesitation. So just text me and let me know, and I'll ship it right out to you tomorrow. I have been very happy these past 2 weeks talking about these Thompson movies and getting a chance to talk about Hunter S. Thompson. When I did this 264 episodes ago, I didn't see this happening, but to open up the channel to talk about all different types of films is a great thing. So I'm having a good time with it.
If you get a chance, go see Bill Murray's version of Hunter Thompson and Where the Buffalo Roam. Excellent movie. And look on Tubi. There's a modern movie about Hunter Thompson when he ran for sheriff in Woody Creek, Colorado. It's very, very good. It's a very, very B movie, but it's well done. You should find that.
Okay. Hold on a second. We got a quick comment here before we close it out. It's from Tyler Grubbett. He said, "Really enjoyed listening to you guys tonight. Looking forward to the next show." Thank you very much, Tyler.
Thank you, sir.
John, anything you need to plug?
You know what I do, and I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't get to send you this. I could have had an image that could have popped up, but it's going on for the next 3 weeks, so I might be able to send it to you if I'm on next week. There's a group of people that I have worked with for several years called the South Jersey Players. These are guys that write original plays, and they perform them either in small venues, like where I did the playwright reading, or in this case, they're doing it at Aroma Theater in Ventnor, Aroma Restaurant in Ventnor, New Jersey. Now, it's not dinner theater. The point about it is that they show the plays and they actually set things up, and for the price of your ticket, you do get a meal, but it's like the restaurant only pushes the restaurant and we push the theater, so to speak. But they're doing it Tuesday nights. The next one is March 25th, April 1st, and Tuesday, April 8th. And seating starts at 5:30. They serve the meal at 6. The show starts by about 7 o'clock, and you're out of there by 8:30. But they're like 4 original plays by very good playwrights. 2 of them are written by this guy named, I swear to God, because he says he's related to him very distantly. His name's Edward Shakespeare. His last name is Shakespeare. And it's funny because I've known him for years, and I kept on every time introducing him. I would always introduce him with a quote from Shakespeare. He would know it. I would know it. But everybody else in the audience goes, "Wait, what?" Because type deal. But they do a good job. And it's at, like I said, it's at Aroma Restaurant, which is 5206 Atlantic Avenue, Ventnor, New Jersey. Mike, I will send it to you. So if you want to attach it to the end of the video, or if next week, because I would like to push it if I'm on for the next 2 weeks. These guys do good work, and they really do struggle to try to find their own spot. And they're now getting affiliated with our alma mater, with Stockton. With Stockton taking over some of the places in Atlantic City type deal, they're trying to get their little group in there involved. I worked with them in a playwriting concept too, called Playwrights and Players, where I was actually teaching people how to write plays and get up and read them and present them in public. They work really hard and they do a good job.
All right.
That's all.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Sounds good. Bill. No, excuse me, not Dr. Gonzo. Anything?
I might be in a new band. I don't know. It's only been a couple of rehearsals. I can't talk about it right now. Still getting there, but hopefully very soon I'll be playing some surfy type music in and around the Monmouth County, Belmar, Manasquan area. So look for it.
If you're joining Fu Manchu, you can just say so.
Fu Manchu, I wish. God, what a great band.
Yeah, they are good.
He's doing Jersey chamber music.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right. For this channel, I don't know. I don't know what's playing coming up this weekend. I'll try to catch a movie. I haven't been to the movies in a couple of weeks.
Snow White's playing.
I swear to God, I'm almost thinking about going just to see what all the fucking drama is about. But then again, I'd have to go watch it. So I'm probably not going to. I don't know what the movie's going to be for next week. I'll get with everybody within the next day or so to map it out, and we'll see what it's going to be. Obviously, for the most part, we're out of Hunter S. Thompson books, and I think I've covered about as many as I want to in terms of those films. So we'll be moving on to something else. But yeah, we'll be back next week.
Fire.
Oh yeah, I gotta find that. So, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Yeah, we'll figure something out. I'll figure something out. All right. My thanks to John K. Alvarez. My thanks to not Dr. Gonzo and not Raul Duke either. We will see you all in the next video. All right. Take care, everyone. God bless you.
All right, bye, guys.
Peace.
Hey, everybody. This is the American Werewolf. Thanks for stopping by. Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button.